All right. So, we're going to meet today. Just trying to get my face on here.
Not just me.
Yeah, not just you. So today we're going to kind of go back a little bit. I know this morning we talked about student exemplars and what we want to see on scholars' papers, but we also talked about scholars who are missing some components of race. And I know you've been working to write exemplars before scholars do their work. So we're going to kind of look at what an exemplar response looks like. Also look at what your exemplar looks like. So an exemplar race response, what your exemplar looks like that you've been working with students on. And then we're going to look for anything that needs to be tightened up, especially for students who are missing a certain component, and thinking about how we can tighten that up specifically in this last push for the last couple of weeks. So the first thing I want to do is show you an exemplar, and this is from Angela. And if you brought your computer, I can share it. Probably make it easier. Let me share it. And you can talk to it. So this is one from Angela that we worked on in one of our morning meetings, and I thought it was a really strong example from Cinderella. What do you feel like makes this response an exemplary race response? And I don't know, have you read this book?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it answers, of course, all parts of race, which they have R, A, C, and E. But I'm noticing, like, the biggest thing, the highest point I most like of leverage here is that they're getting information all over the text. So they only know, from reading the story, they only know that they're not good baseball players from a picture. They know they're mean from a tale from text. And then it goes to page 6 and gives that evidence for citing evidence, and then it also gives evidence of how they were mean. So it's answering all parts of the question. And then this is important because the coach wanted someone that was good at baseball to be on his team, and he wanted someone to be a leader because he made Mateo the captain, which is very much like, that's an inference. That's where the inference is coming in. Instead of the inference being in the answer section of this response, it's in the explaining part.
Why is it important to do this in the explaining part? To put the inference in the explaining part?
It shows like I would say the deepest level of understanding.
Which is kind of what we talked about when we have the E part of race. We need to make sure that students are digging into their schema and like putting what they cited as evidence from the text, as well as what they know from their schema to help them explain and answer. And I know you said right now they're struggling to write the E. So this is something that is important for not only scholars to do, but when you're writing your exemplar responses, I think about how you're doing this as well so that you can show them how to think through this. So great. So I think you pulled out the important things. So every part of race was labeled, which is like a basic procedure that we want them to always follow. We also wanted them, and part of what you said, like making sure every part of race is labeled, they restated the question by removing the question word. They made sure that the page number is mentioned, and they cited any quotes or facts. And for that inferential question, they took things from the picture, they took quotes, and they took it throughout the book, which is important for an inferential question, and critical thinking, because what happens is when they have to answer those questions, they have to take events from multiple parts of the text. Even if you look at the step tool, it says like they can put together events from like multiple episodes, like across text, to be able to answer questions. And then also just making sure that they know these themes. This is important because I know these are things we worked on in our meetings. So we're going to make sure that all of those components are in race responses that you're writing as exemplars and showing to scholars. So now I want to look at yours, and I know you already pulled out some things, like you always do that. You always pull out what you want to leverage before, before it's time. But I think let's look at your response and let's think about what you want to leverage and why from this one. And you can tell me a little bit about the book.
It's the same story as Little Red Riding Hood, except this one is like southwestern, and it's a coyote.
Like
and Little Red doesn't have like a basket of bread. She has hot chili.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's going to her grandma because her grandma's sick.
It's one of those A to Z.
Yeah,
Famous
yes,
A to Z
it
books.
is. It's a good one. I like it. On page 11, why does Little Red say, "Oh, I think you'll find it's quite hot," when Medium Coyote asks her to heat up the chili? And then I wrote, Little Red says that because she added all her secret hot sauce to the chili and made it super hot or spicy. My evidence is on page 8, where the text says, Little Red's secret sauce was the spiciest hot sauce anyone had ever made. This tells me that Little Red knew the chili was already hot enough for Medium Coyote. So this is similar. I almost want to add a little bit to E. I need to think a little bit more about it, but it's similar in that the inference really does come in the E.
Yeah.
Like if they didn't have that E, if this answer didn't have E, it would not be correct.
No, it wouldn't be. So if I'm looking at it, I see the strong parts that are similar to the exemplar. The R is strong. It's a clear answer. Made it super hot. Yeah, and my evidence is on page 8 in the text where she says the sauce was the spiciest sauce anyone had ever made. Were there any more? So I don't have this text in front of me.
Any more moments?
So if we're thinking about just like in Angela's, where there were like there were multiple moments or like things that happened in the picture, or maybe even another that kind of solidifies the citation that would help make the explanation a little bit stronger.
Maybe. I could say, then Little Red poured a whole lot of her secret hot sauce into the chili pot. And on page 8, it also says, Little Red's sauce was the spiciest hot sauce anyone ever made.
Yeah, because pouring more, like, that
That's
actually
part
helps
of the answer.
part of the answer.
Yeah.
So I would have added that. You can write it.
Right.
If you want. Have you done this last time? You're getting ready to.
I have, but I didn't give it to them because of how
Right.
messed up it is from the printer. I haven't done it with memory cooks though.
Great. And then if we're thinking about what we just put as part of the evidence we've cited, how could you make this explanation stronger? It says, this tells me that chili was already hot enough for Medium Coyote.
I would say hot or spicy enough to clarify that hot also means spicy. Hot enough for Medium Coyote. How would... And she didn't need to use a microwave, but that's not necessarily like it could be even better. It tells me a Little Red knew if the chili was already hot or spicy enough. Even, I would probably say even without warming it up.
And then why would you say that that's important to put those things in?
So they're making the connection that it doesn't mean hot as in going into the microwave and getting temperature hot. It's hot as in it's spicy.
Yeah.
Because it's like a pun, and puns are really hard for second graders to understand.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of how we can even make it a little. So I think I do think hot or spicy enough, like, talks about it's not about warming it up, it's about the fact that it is, like, spicy hot. I'm trying to think of how you can further clarify that, why it's important that it's not warming up.
Temperature, warming up without warming.
Yeah, and I guess maybe this is fine, but I would even say, like, maybe without you having to increase the temperature, because you want them to, like, make that difference. And I think the hot or spicy kind of gets at that. So maybe we don't even need any more, for medium calorie, even though he wasn't warming it up. But I think this is probably the most important part, because you want scholars to know that they don't need to warm it up in a microwave, and that hot or spicy is like the flavor of it. So I do think adding that is important. And how does this kind of match what Angela did as like a more thorough explanation?
It hits on both parts of the answer. So she had all her secret hot sauce, which really that made it super hot or spicy. And then it brings it back to that answer, but then explains it further, clarifies.
Yeah, and we also just talked about the impact of scholars. Like, they understand things at a more critical level. Like, they're able to, like, make the connection, understand a pun. And those are things in third grade that they're going to have to know how to do, especially when they start analyzing text on their own. When they start getting ready for their state test next year. So this is a good start for them. And then I think as we move on to talking about how you model this for kids, you can actually pull this out as a key point when you're modeling. So I wanted to today, your action step today and like over the next week is to make sure, let me pull it up, is to make sure that you have scripted exemplar race responses that, again, things that you're already doing, has every part of race labeled, that make sure the question is stated by removing the question, make sure that we restate the question by removing the question word, make sure you use a page number, and I would actually say, like, not only just saying the page number, but like quotes and facts from like multiple parts of the text when relevant. It may not always be, especially for a factual question, it's probably not relevant, but for inferential and critical thinking, making sure you take the key things from like one or two parts of text when citing the evidence, and then writing explanations that are like super thorough by using a stem, like you already have, like, this tells me that, or this is important because, but also helping to tie in the evidence and schema and making that obvious when you're writing your answer. So what is your action step?
To have a scripted race response, especially with like quotes and facts from multiple parts of the text, and of course with all the other stuff that we've talked about, like no question words and evidence right from the story, all parts of race, and then also making it super clear, especially like when modeling, like when I'm using evidence and when I'm using my schema, and then always having like those stems for E. Like that's important because, or this tells me that.
Great. So I think we especially want to focus on like the C and the E part. Kind of like what we've been doing. So what we're going to do today, there's no like practice where you're going to like get up and tell me something. But what I did want you to do is, that's why I asked you to bring either a lesson or a book. I wanted to look at some of the questions that you had coming up, and I wanted us to just be able to script as many responses as we could. And especially thinking about that C and the E. And that way you also have them already ready to go.
Yes.
Which is always great. And you can either type them, like we can make a shared document, because I know you type them and print them out. If you don't want to just write it. And just share it with me, and then I can look at it.
Okay.